Before we start the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel and activate the bell button so that you can receive everything new from you that starts. The series was shown in 1989 in Colombia, and we know that at that time, drug trafficking was widespread. It was not normal in Colombia, and she was evading Colombia to America. And that is why America was helping the Colombian police to arrest her on these drug dealers in order to get rid of brain pain. And during this period, eavesdropping technology was not very widespread, nor was it as advanced as it was nowadays, for example. America could only eavesdrop on airphones, and so that they could also eavesdrop on these phones had to be flown over a place close to this phone antenna, so that it could pick up the signals of these phones. And there was another problem: they could actually eavesdrop on these phones, but they could not determine who was speaking. And thus America developed a feature to identify the voices of the speakers. Benjon is currently staying at one of the American security headquarters in Colombia. We know that they just received a signal from the phone of a drug dealer named Poison, and they know that this Poison, he is going to a certain restaurant where he meets a friend of his or another drug dealer named Lizard. So one of the officers present is communicating with Murphy. And this remains an officer in the Drug Enforcement Administration here in Colombia. And this officer knows Murphy all something. Murphy immediately contacts a Colombian officer named Carrillo, and they know everything. He immediately takes Carrillo by force, and they go to the restaurant. There are Poison Wizard, and they open fire on everyone present and finish them off. And the mission is completed successfully, but for one moment, my friend. What is it? What brought Officer Murphy to this point is that he works in Colombia and helps Colombian officers arrest drug dealers. In order to know the answer to this question, we must go back a little to the past. In the 70s, we were in Chile, and we knew that Chile during this period is ruled by a dictatorial ruler named Pinochet, and Pinochet was indescribably supported by America. America was afraid to get rid of Pinochet, as the communists controlled the country, and that is why they supported Pinochet with all their might. The important thing is that Chile at that time was the brain of drug dealers and smuggled them to America. So accordingly, Pinochet launched a campaign against drug dealers and arrested them, all of them. And he did not judge by the way, but rather he killed them and threw them into mass graves. Once upon a time, the soldiers were gathering a group of merchants. He is killed as usual. But when the soldiers walk to one of these merchants, he leaves the cemetery and is alive because no bullet came to him. This person was Mateo Moreno, known as the Cockroach, and we will mention him throughout the message because he personally loves this name. The important thing, Sarsar, is that he did not escape from this cemetery and escaped death. He returned home, took his wife, and fled the country completely. Where is Colombia, my friend? The stronghold of drugs. The new thing after Chile is that the Cockroach needed to deal with a new smuggler in Colombia, so that this smuggler would smuggle drugs. What Al-Rassan makes for any other country in general. And for Al-Rassan's knowledge, he originally made cocaine from the beginning. In general, we still know that Colombia at that time, there were 3 very famous smuggling gangs. The first gang was the gang of the brothers Ocho, Hori, Fabio, and 3 other countries. Sisters smuggle anything from Colombia to anywhere in the world. But their problem is that they were very expensive. And that is why the Cockroach decided not to. He dealt with them, and there were 2 gangs in front of the Cockroach. The first was a gang of a person named Jose Gacha, known as the Mexican. And he was a crazy man who can kill anyone at any time without any reason. And that is why the Cockroach is still there and no longer. Now he has another gang ahead of him, which is the gang of Pablo Escobar and his cousin Gustavo. And here he remains, my friend. We have to go and look at Pablo Escobar and Gustav. At this time, we see that they were working in smuggling, but smuggling things very simple like televisions, electrical appliances, and things like that. Currently, Pablo and Gustavo were smuggling a charge from the devices. We are going to Colombia with this electricity, but there are Colombian police forces stopping them. And at the head of these forces is Commander Herrera. At that time, Hera decided to imprison Pablo and Gustav, but Pablo did not care at all. And Hera knew that he knew him and his family one by one. And not just him, he and all his men know them all. He knows their family, and he knows Babylon, everyone. That if they don't leave him to do his job, one after the other will finish them off at that moment. Herrera knew that Pablo was not easy at all, so he decided that he would not do anything to him. But he also decided to work with him. He takes money from him in exchange for letting him pass anything at any time he wants comfortably. In general, on the same day at night, they meet Pablo and Just Fu are with the Cockroach. So he introduced them to the Cockroach that he makes cocaine, and they want to smuggle this cocaine to Peru because he can sell it. A gram there costs $10. At that moment, Pablo thinks a little and says to him, Sarsar, you sell a gram in Peru for $10. That's right. What do you think if I could smuggle these drugs to Miami in America? You would think how much you could sell a gram for. At that time, Al-Rassan was amazed by Pablo's words. Because there is a lot of money coming in, and they have decided from now on to smuggle cocaine to Miami. Not Peru, by the way, Miami, by the way. So let's look at her and see, my friend, that at this time, Officer Murphy and his friend, Officer Kevin, are working in the drug control department in Miami at that time. The marijuana trade was very widespread in Miami, and therefore we currently see Kevin and Murphy running after someone. This is with marijuana, and they can catch him very easily. They go and stay up late together in a casino to celebrate while they are sitting. Kevin tells Murphy that there is a girl in the place who likes him. So believe me, the stupid Murphy, even though this was a prank. And the important thing is that he goes for this girl. He asks for her number, but the girl refuses. So Kevin prefers to see Murphy's beer for the girl again and asks her to write him any number. It doesn't have to be her number, just to show Kevin, and he doesn't want to make fun of him. The girl almost left Murphy on her, so she actually wrote him her number, and that's it. The situation ended like this. And when Murphy returned home, he called the number he had taken and discovered that it was a number the girl is serious, and from this moment on, Murphy loved this girl and married her for a year. On the other hand, we see that Pablo and Just Fu go to visit the cockroach in Peru, and we see that the cockroach was working in a small laboratory in Peru, where it was manufactured cocaine. Pablo started taking drugs from the cockroach and taking them to Colombia, so that they could be sold from there, and also smuggled to America while Pablo said that the business was getting bigger and bigger, and that he needed the cockroach next to him more. He immediately bought a house in Colombia and made the cockroach make cocaine in it. In general, after a while, we see Pablo with his mother at home and his wife Tata, and we know that they already know what he does as a teacher of any problem, and currently, Pablo's mother used to make him a jacket with a suit and secret pockets, so that he could smuggle drugs in it and deliver Gustavo home now. And with him is another person named Leon, and we know that Leon is the one who will take the drugs and put them in the jacket that Pablo's mother made, and go with it to America to smuggle him there. The important thing is that when Leon arrives in America, he meets another person named Leader. We know that Leader is the one who will be responsible for distributing drugs in America, and in general, after a not very long period of time, the work began to increase in a way that was not. It was normal to the point that Leon could not save the drugs alone. So he appointed other people with him to smuggle the drugs, and these people were still there. They differ between ordinary female pilots and others and others and others. And that's it, sir. After the work period, it increased more and more and more. So Pablo was forced at that time to smuggle drugs in food shipments. I'm going from Colombia to America, like potatoes, coffee, etc. One time, Pablo and Gustavo go and meet Leader, so they know Leader. He bought a private plane and he will be able to transport them in it at one time. But it is less than 1,300 kilometers long cocaine for Miami. Of course, everyone is happy and decides to increase their work more and more before Pablo's work. My friend, he had to make a cocaine with a worker everywhere in the jungle so that no one would be able to reach him. One time, Pablo and Gustav went. They visit their laboratory in the jungle. And before there, of course, the cockroach talks to Pablo and tells him that he is upset with him because he is no longer there. He cares about him at work and throws him here in the jungle. In addition, he has started taking very little money. And this is not fair because he is basically the one who Pablo knew about this job. From that moment on, Pablo began to feel very uncomfortable with the cockroach. He was sure that a day like this would come and he would take it anyway. This talk, and after a while of all this talk, we see Pablo sitting with the Mexican ones and also one of the Brotherhood gang, if you remember them. And now Pablo is breaking up with them that he will smuggle their cocaine to Miami because they don't know how to escape there. And in return, he gets 35% of the right every shipment, and they all agree to Pablo's words, and he breaks it like this. And the reason for this agreement has spread cocaine in Miami is so abnormal that the police, led by Murphy, were forced to engage in literally armed clashes. A day with so many drug dealers in Miami that one time Murphy killed one of these cocaine distributors, who was already a child who did not finish 17 years old. And although Murphy killed him because he was defending himself, he was very upset. We will be back in a year. It remains for Colombia again. And one time we see the cockroach going to meet Gustavo, and they know that he wants to meet Pablo in order to increase his share of. The money is a little, but Gustavo refuses and forgets to pay back what he takes and stay away from Pablo so as not to finish him off. So Sarsar agrees he was angry with him. But from now on, he decided to play on Gustavo and Pablo. And one time we see that the police led by Herrera, they stop Pablo's men who are smuggling vegetables and arrest them, even though Herrera agrees with Pablo. But he still arrests him. Why did he do this? We will know in a year. The next day, Pablo learns from Gustavo that Herrera seized shipments of cocaine belonging to them. So Pablo goes crazy and takes some go to Herrera's name. And without any introduction, he keeps cursing him and getting angry with him. So Herrera gives him the second one, and they read blue. And they actually come. Criminal photographers take pictures of Pablo in preparation for his imprisonment. And know these pictures. My friend Pablo will pay a lot for it in his life, because from that moment on, his face was known in the records criminal. But after that, Herrera summoned Pablo and told him that he did not want to get into trouble with him. And that is why he increased the money he gave him $100,000 per shipment for $1 million, especially since the price of one shipment sold $5 million at that time. Pablo thought Herrera knew that one of my men had informed you of the price of the shipments, and I would definitely divide the money with you. Based on that, Pablo was offering. Now Herrera has an amount of more than $1 million, but on the condition that he knows who leaked this price information to him, so that of course Pablo can get rid of him and so on. Herrera doesn't even have to divide the money with anyone else here who likes this topic and knows Pablo said that the cockroach was the one who raised this information, and they also knew that the broker was smuggling drugs from behind him in Miami and was originally selling for himself. Pablo goes crazy and decides that he will finish the secret as soon as possible. But 1 second, my friend, is who is the cockroach drug dealer in Miami. We know this merchant when we go to Miami itself. We see Murphy and Officer Kevin while they are undercover and waiting for a cocaine merchant. They wanted to buy from him, but in reality, they came to arrest him. After a while, this merchant arrives and his name is Herman, and we know that this Herman, the cockroach dealer here in Miami. The important thing is that everything was going well, and Murphy and Kevin were going to arrest Herman. But something happened. I changed everything because suddenly a motorcycle stormed the place and 2 of Pablo's men got stuck and kept shooting everyone. Pablo sent them here to finish off Herman because he knows that Herman is working with the cockroach behind his back. The important thing is that these militants can kill Kevin and also Herman. As for Murphy, he wants to finish off one of them and arrest the second, whose name was Kika, and he actually controls Kika. Unfortunately, he leaves with a bail of $2 million, and of course the one who paid them was Pablo. At that time, my friend, Murphy felt wronged and that his friend had no right. He took his wife and moved to Colombia so that Murphy could see his work there and arrest Pablo. And yes, this is the way Murphy arrived to Colombia and worked with Colombian officers. And here we come to the incident that happened at the beginning of the series. When I told you that Murphy after a Colombian officer named Carrillo just to get rid of poison and bring in drug dealers, sir. After this operation is over, we see that Murphy goes to the operation site and prefers to photograph everything, something in the place for him to work on. After that, we see Gustavo going to meet Pablo. And we know from their words that Poison and Laser were countries. They are already working with him. And Pablo also knows that there is an American officer named Murphy investigating this case. And Pablo begins to feel that Murphy, this is an unnatural danger to him. So Gustavo ordered that he work on Murphy's head with a very large prize worth $500,000 for anyone he kills him. But by the way, my friend, the Poison Wizard case happened after a very long, respectable period, even after Murphy settled in Colombia. We will go back in time a little again to see what Murphy did from the first time he arrived in Colombia. He goes back in time and we see Murphy and his wife, whose name we know is Connie, and they are now riding the plane and on their way for Colombia. At the time when Murphy was currently going to Colombia, Pablo's work was increasing more and more and more to the point that Leader was great. The merchants who worked with Pablo bought a very large island in the Bahamas and worked there as a gas station, an aircraft rest house, and so on. Pablo and Gustavo expanded their work and built many cocaine manufacturing laboratories. They brought scientists from Germany to make cocaine in the best possible way and also hide it in the best possible way, to the point that the scientists hide cocaine inside Coca-Cola bottles and in places you literally can't imagine it did not appear. For example, he saw that Pablo was with the Mexican, and now they are standing at a boat like this. And Pablo and the Mexican know that this boat has drugs in it. The Mexican brought his dog to smell the drugs, but the dog doesn't smell anything because the drugs are hidden between the layers of glass in the boat. The Mexican goes crazy that his dog did not reveal it, their own. And Gustavo Pablo knows that the money for drugs has increased so much that they are unable to wash them. So they sold Pablo that he would act and respond. And that's it, sir. From that moment on, Pablo will start a small taxi company like this, where he will launder money, but the money will be more they wash it in a company or two. So they decide to do something crazy, which is to bury the money in certain places. No one knows her except them, and they actually start doing that. But my friend, as they say, the news never hides. And therefore the news of Pablo's singing brain dealers are spreading throughout Colombia. And currently we are seeing a gang called the M19 gang. We know that these are gangs or armed communist groups headed by a person named Ivan the Ugly. By the way, these people were insane in an unnatural way, to the point that they once stormed a museum and stole Simon Oliver's great sword from it, the sword that was used by Commander Simon Pulver, the liberator of Colombia. The important thing is that this group now knows that the drug gangs have become an unnatural song, so they decided to kidnap Marta Ocho, who is the sister of the Ocho brothers, whom we talked about a while ago, and they will be... Now they have decided to kidnap her. After that, they ask for a very large ransom from her sisters, and they actually go to his wife Ocho, and he notifies me, the one whose wife was kidnapped. By the way, Murphy arrived on the same day with his wife, Connie, until Colombia, as soon as they arrived. And when the employee at the airport knew that they were Americans, he decided to detain them after a while. A corrupt officer arrived at the place and asked Murphy what he would do in Colombia. They told Murphy that he would work at the Embassy American, and here this officer still knows that Murphy is an officer and does not hide his passport, because then make sure that this passport, sir, reaches drug dealers so that they know all the American officers in Colombia. We see that Pablo is currently appearing on TV with a broadcaster named Valerie, and he talks about himself, and that he is a businessman and works good and all this beautiful talk. And we know that Pablo is trying to shine himself in front of people because he intends to. He is in the field of politics. But apart from all of this, I want you, my friend, to remember Valerie very well, because she got closer to Pablo in an unnatural way, and she will be very important in the future at the same time. But in another place, we see the officer as a guard. And we know that the guard is an officer in the American Anti-Narcotics Department and works here at the embassy. And currently he remains a guard. He is sitting with a girl named Helen, and we know that the guard is crazy about Helen because she works with drug dealers, and Javier sells her if she is transferred to him. Very important information. He will travel to America as she has dreamed all her life. The second day, Javier will go to the embassy and stay with Murphy for the first time. From this moment on, they will both be partners, and their first and primary goal is to attack drug dealers, whether Pablo or others. After a period of time, all of this makes Murphy and a guard know that the drug dealers will go and meet at a certain hotel. So they bring Officer Zombie Carrillo. They go to this hotel and keep filming all the merchants, including Pablo, of course, but that's not important. What's really important is that Pablo meets in Mexican, the Ocho brothers, and all the merchants know that he intends to establish a criminal organization in which he will manage himself and manage all his work. In return, he will always defend them and provide them with protection, and everyone will agree with Pablo's words. And from that moment on, Pablo became the leader of all merchants. Drugs are almost in Colombia, and Pablo reads that he calls his organization Death to the Kidnappers. And they read that the first operation they will carry out will be against M19, so that of course they can bring back Marta Ocho. The important thing is that when this meeting ends, they have a small celebration like this. And among the girls present at this party is Helen. The problem, my friend, is that the Mexican he likes Hill Anbic with her now? And Helen tries to get information from him, but he feels something is wrong. So he gives Helen to his men because they tortured her. At that time, Carrillo, Murphy, and a guard were waiting for Helen to find out anything from her. And she knew what, but Helen did not come to me. He was a guard over her, especially since he was giving to her. So he decided that he would go and save her. And now he is afraid that Murphy will wait for him here and take him. Carrillo and a few soldiers go to the hotel where the Mexican men are, and he finishes them all off and burns Helen. And the problem ends there after that. After a while, we see that Pablo starts his business with the M19 group and sends them his men to kill them without. They agreed to bring Marta Ojo back. And one time Ivan goes to his headquarters, and I find all his men maturing and a letter written next to them. She said that you must bring Marta back safely. Otherwise you and your families will all die. He is really afraid, and here is Ivan. And Marta comes back and then leaves Ivan himself to Pablo, and he has Simon Pulver's legendary sword with him. Even asks Pablo to kill him because he made a mistake when he kidnapped Marta. But more importantly, something to keep him away from his family, because Ivan, my friend, felt that Pablo could also kill his entire family. But Pablo surprises Ivan now. He takes the sword from him, but as a gift, nothing more. And they know that he will not harm him or his family, but will also work with him, making Ivan happy and walking away. So Gustavo asks Pablo how and in what he will employ Ivan. And they know Pablo will tell him at the right time. And my friend, from this moment on, Pablo's reputation for the unnatural shape of the LEM and his new organization, the Death to the Kidnappers organization, has become widespread. I will go to Murphy, who was returning home. It is very normal with his wife, Connie, and they see someone coming down from the building looking a little strange. But what they take care of him and go out to their house again. So the house is completely dilapidated and everything in it is broken. And Bella is also his cat, Connie. He was killed. So Murphy knows that Ander asked him about drug dealers to stay away from their work. The next day, Murphy goes to work and talks to a guard, and they know what happened. All of that time, a little guard thinks. And Murphy knows that those who revealed it are definitely the airport workers he met before the airport, and certainly these workers leaked all its information to drug dealers. So the drug dealers went to his house and did everything they did. These are so that he can warn them, get close to them, or go after them. And Murphy's guard knows that they will not remain silent about the issue of storming his house because of the merchants. They are increasing what they are doing. And now Murphy's guard goes to the American ambassador here in Colombia, and they know what happened, and he knows them. The ambassador said that there is a corrupt officer named Suarez who can help them so that they know who really entered the house. They do not deny the news and go as a guard Murphy and Beka Ablo Saruk and give him money so that he can find out exactly who entered Murphy's house. And Suarez does not waste time all the time. Best invited the workers who dealt with Murphy at the airport. And after a while he was beaten and shaken and so on, meaning he learned from them that they had leaked Murphy's information to someone that's his name. Boysen, and this Boysen is definitely the one who did this. And yes, my friend, this Boysen is what we saw in the past, as I told you, and it was still not their match now. The important thing is that Murphy, in general, he and a guard decide that they will deliver this poison from now on at the same time. By the way, we see that Pablo gets closer and closer to the broadcaster named Valerie and talks to her more and knows that he wants to enter the field of politics because he takes his horse and helps most of the poor. And my friend, the fact that Pablo wanted to help the poor was true because he was poor anyway. He really wanted to help the poor people. The important thing is that Valerie uses her connections and can arrange a meeting for Pablo with a lawyer named Duque. Lawyer Duque is a lawyer for the Liberal Party, which means you could say that the ruling party in Colombia is important, that Duque is able to reach an agreement with Pablo and Duque. He takes 30,000 and in return, Pablo will nominate himself to the Minister of Justice, meaning he will support him in elections. In exchange for, of course, Pablo donated $3 million to the Ministry of Justice and its projects. And Doc actually goes and sits with the Minister of Justice, whose name is Lara. And we know here a very important thing is that Lara is an honorable man. Of course, he refuses all this money now. He thinks that Pablo is a drug dealer, but he can. In the end, Doki convinces him that he is not corrupt or anything, and that he will benefit the country. So, BW Lara supports him and also takes the $1 million to support him Ministry of Justice. After that, we see Pablo talking to Boysen and a number of his men, and they go to meet the Minister of Justice and give him $3 million as they agreed. So they agreed, and on their way. On the other hand, we see that Carrillo, Murphy, and a guard were in Sanaa on Poison's phone. They currently know where he is going. So they decided to ambush him and arrest him. But a small problem occurs, which is that my friend Suarez is a corrupt man who works with Pablo. So he simply calls Pablo and asks him money in exchange for very important information that he will give him. So Pablo knows Suarez that the police are ambushing the Poison now and he will be able to attack him quickly. Pablo Boysen calls and passes by. He doesn't go anywhere and returns with the money immediately. So Boysen is doing this and they really can't. He's a guard, Murphy and Carrillo, they arrest anyone. On the other hand, we see that Pablo goes to hold conferences to paralyze himself more and more before the elections. And of course, he does not forget that he distributes a lot of money to the poor, which means that his fame increases. And he is with Pablo at the conference, his wife Tata, and also Valerie. And she notices Tata said that there is such admiration between Pablo and Valerie. So when Tata goes home, Pablo knows that she wants her to stay away from Valerie completely. So Pablo keeps lying to her and telling her that he is not cheating on her or anything. After that, Tata gets very tired and she will be born because Ali. The idea of being pregnant in the first place is that Pablo takes her to the hospital. And in the hospital, his cousin Gustavo comes to Pablo. And Gustavo is now talking to Pablo, knows that he wants to forget about politics completely and take care of his home, his wife, and his work much better. And that this talk bothers him, Pablo, but he does not comment. And Tata is finally born and gives birth to a girl whom Pablo is unnaturally happy with. On the other hand, my friend, we see that the Mexican is talking to the Ocho brothers, and we know that they are upset because Pablo left the work to them. He wants to reach the Senate so that he can take a share. And they are not important at all, and it is clear that they are. They want to turn against Pablo. But they are afraid to do so on the same day at night. Pablo sits with Leader, and Leader knows that he will appoint a place his cousin Gustavo managed the cocaine and science laboratories. Pablo did this because he was annoyed with Gustavo, as we said, and he asked Pablo, Leader, are the Mexicans and the Ocho brothers upset about this election issue? So they sold the lidar that they are upset. Oh, really? And they see that the issue is not there. It is necessary, but it will solve the problem. And only from the second day will Leader start managing the work of laboratories cocaine. Thanks to Leader at work, production increases in an abnormal way in these years. The American embassy sits with Murphy and a guard and knows that Babila will enter the Senate. This cannot happen, and they must stop him. In order to stop him, they must prove that he is a criminal and that he was dealing drugs. Murphy thinks with a little guard, and they decide that they will go to hell. Pablo's family might be able to catch anything on him like this or that. So of course they went to Suarez, who in turn made them know that Pablo was a long time ago. Very much. He was arrested on smuggling charges. Yes, my friend, when Herrera arrested him. If you think, the important thing is that Sue. He also knows the locations of officers so that they can know details about this case from them, so that they can pin him on Pablo. But the problem is that Suarez is corrupt, as I tell you. He used to sell information to Murphy and a guard and then sell it back to Pablo. Pablo used to send his men to kill him. Someone can prove anything to him after what happened. All the roads were closed in front of Pablo as a guard, so they decided to play it and shout. Of course, when Pablo had a case filed against him, he took criminal photos, so they decided to find out who this photographer was and take Pablo's reputation from him. And this would be bigger proof that drugs, my friend, are the pictures that I told you Pablo would pay a very, very high price for. They can actually reach this photographer now, and he chooses that they took the pictures from him and put them under witness protection program so that Pablo does not kill Raver. Murphy and the ambassador after that and meet Minister Lara and the country's minister. Lara, these pictures, which proves that Pablo is actually a vegetable merchant. So Lara decided, because he is honorable, as I told you, to expose Pablo, and we will see what he will do with him. The important thing is that he is transgressed. The days are getting more and more, and the elections are actually happening, and the surprise is that Pablo is not winning. And we know, of course, there is a loss behind Pablo. But Pablo does not win because Pablo makes Hero and himself the one who won. He disputes his seat in the Senate, and in this way Pablo remains an official member of the Senate. Days pass more and more, and one day we are in the first session of the council. Pablo goes to the council, and he is unusually happy that this has been his dream for a long time. But of course there must be a word, but hopes Pablo's joy is all destroyed. As soon as the session starts, we start the introductions. Lara speaks and knows everyone says that Pablo is a drug dealer, and it is not appropriate for him to be among them here. Show everyone here the criminal photos of Pablo that prove everything he says. Pablo is shocked without a word. He leaves the hall. After that, Pablo starts playing with Lara in a media war by coming out and saying statements against Lara and that he is racist and things like that. But Lara also did not remain silent. He goes out everywhere to market Pablo's reputation and everyone like him, who are drug dealers and businessmen. And because of Lara's campaign against him, drug dealers, we see that he can reveal that the Mexican is a drug dealer and has a sports club. And he grows up and leaves this club, in addition to the brothers. It also harms him greatly, as does Pablo. And because of all this, the Colombian government decided to send Lara to Czechoslovakia, meaning he remains an ambassador there because if he stays in Colombia, he will be killed. But Pablo still sees him sitting with Tata and Gustavo, and he will be in a very office because what happened. So he decided that he would take revenge on Lara before he traveled. On the day that Lara was traveling, by the way, Pablo appeared on TV. Everyone knows that he gave up his seat in the Senate and does not want any political position. And that is it. He will retire from this political life without anything problems or revenge. But Pablo's words, of course, are not true. We see Lara now riding in his car. He is going to the airport to travel. And suddenly Pablo's men come out and shoot him. And Lara dies in a very, very sad scene. And he comes, there is no one now, and Javier is seeing what happened, and he is upset. Because they consider it the reason why all this is happening to Lara. He is already an honorable man, and from this moment on Murphy decides that he will not harm anyone else who is honorable with him in this dirty war. But you know, my friend, just as Har's death is a very sad thing, it also has positive aspects, including these positive aspects. One of those who killed him was arrested, and this person confessed that Pablo Escobar was the one who ordered him to kill, so accordingly Pablo became wanted for justice. Colombia also made an agreement with America stipulating that if Colombia arrested anyone accused of drug trafficking, America would be harmed. They might hand him over to America and he would be imprisoned there. And of course, this terrified all the drug dealers and smugglers. They do not have any powers there. And we see that Pablo is now meeting with the Mexican Just Fu leader and also the Ocho brothers. And they know that they must work in every way against the issue of their imprisonment in America. And they are actually doing all their work. In an abnormal way, for example, a Mexican goes to hire a group of mercenaries to protect him, while leader goes to the radio and prefers to go out. Many programs talk against this campaign. And finally, the Ocho brothers go to a public relations company to have them launch a very large campaign against extradition of criminals to America. But Pablo remained working in a completely different way because, for example, he used to send letters to very famous politicians warning them against supporting the extradition campaign, which would kill him and their families. And among the people who Pablo sent them his message, Jalan was the presidential candidate, and far from politicians at all, Pablo used to send letters to the judges and attend the verdict on any criminal to surrender to America and whoever would upset it. And this matter forced the judiciary to. They attend the trials wearing masks so that no one knows their identities. But Pablo also knew their identities, and he also finished off them, and something completely unexpected is happening to the U.S. military representative and the U.S. intelligence representative here in Colombia, who are holding a meeting with the ambassador, Murphy, and a guard. They know that the U.S. president decided to reduce support for the Drug Enforcement Administration because he would support the army and intelligence in order to fight the communists, said that this is the real danger now to America, and they told them that support for the fight against drugs would be $100,000 a year, no more than that. At that time, Agard and Murphy decide to use this money very well. So Agard goes, a Colombian police general named Harmy accepts and gives Harmy the $100,000 bribe. And in return, he asks him to appoint Carrillo on Pablo's case. Harmy agrees and is Agard who did this because he knows Carrillo very well and knows that he is a good officer and helps him very much because they arrest Pablo. The important thing is that Carrillo does not waste time and takes Murphy and Agard for one of his men. Pablo arrested him before and prefers currently. Carrillo is being tortured, and Pablo asks him exactly where he is sitting. So this man arrogantly confesses where Pablo is. So Carrillo comes out with great force with the police. He has Agard and Murphy with him to arrest Pablo. But thanks to what Pablo also knows about this news, he reaches him. And Pablo quickly decides to run away from home, while Gustavo prefers to burn any evidence that might incriminate them. And after that, they all run away from the houses on a private plane. And when they arrive, Murphy and Agard, and everyone does not find anyone, of course, but they find something important amidst the burning evidence, a paper that does not burn an address. So they take each other and go to this address, and they discover that this is the address of Pablo's accountant, whose name is Sahib Blackbeard, of course, is arrested, and they can seize more than 6,000 papers and files against him, Pablo Escobar. But the evidence is transferred to the Supreme Court in Colombia. And so far, what is not perfect here is that Harmo refuses to leave Murphy, or Agard takes any evidence from here under the pretext that it belongs to the state. And Harmo does this because he is upset because he took a very small bribe. More than that, the important thing is that Murphy acts, steals a piece of evidence, and runs away from this piece of paper, sir. There was a money transfer to a person named Cecil, and she wanted Murphy's guard to go to Suarez. They ask who Cecil is. They know that he is a former American pilot who is currently working illegally with Pablo and smuggling drugs to him. After that, he goes, Murphy is an American intelligence representative, and they ask about this Cecil and show him his picture. And they know the representative of Cecil's location and address all the time. They go secretly, and Murphy arrests him. At that time, Cecil asks them to be acquitted, and in return, he will help him greatly in Pablo's case. They agree with his words, and therefore in their hands, he will send a picture of this picture, my friend, in which Pablo Escobar appears while he is in a country called Nicaragua. He was dealing drugs there, and in the picture, he had with him members of the Communist Council who rule Nicaragua, saying that they were already dealing in drugs. Of course, when you ask what this picture will be useful for, I would like to tell you, my friend, that it will be very useful for Murphy to take this picture and give it to the Ambassador America. In turn is following Washington, and the issue is spreading widely, because the American president's death was marked by communists. So he decided to start a large-scale war against the communists and drug dealers because they are agents. And thus Murphy and Agard are now receiving unprecedented support from weapons, money, etc., just so they can reach Pablo. Because of all of this, they reach many laboratories belonging to Pablo and Bedmer. And in one of these laboratories, they are able to arrest leader there. And of course, he is deported to America. He is sentenced to 13,935 years in prison after what happened. Pablo met the Mexican in Just Fu and the brothers Ocho and let them know that the war has begun and that he will not remain silent. And I will tell you what he did. Of course. But in front of me, now we go to Agard, and there are no people who are sitting in a restaurant like this, and you come to them. Currently, I am Murphy's wife and her friend from the hospital, Alyssa, and I am from the hospital because I work in a hospital like this. The important thing is this: Alyssa, my friend, remains a member of the M19 communist group, but in secret, of course. And in general, you get to know each other. Alyssa is on everyone's side and the situation passes. On the same night, we see that Pablo goes to meet Ivan, the head of the M19 group, and they find out he wants them to do something like this, and in return, they will take a lot of money that will benefit their gathering. So Ivan agrees very much, of course. At this moment, Alyssa arrives because she will remain Ivan's wife. The important thing is that after Pablo and those with him walk, Alyssa spoke to Ivan and asked him what he was doing. Yes, Pablo is here. So he told her that Pablo decided to support them with money, and in return they would carry out a very large operation against the state. And she saw that Alyssa said that this is very wrong. And that is why the next day, Alyssa goes to Connie and confesses to her that she is a member in the M19 group. You ask her to take her to any officer in the American embassy to tell them something necessary. Connie agrees and takes Alice. He has a guard, and the guard knows everything she knew from Ivan, and he always calls Mir. And they know that Evan and his group intend to cause a disaster today. Then Murphy will go all the time to the ambassador to introduce her to what he knew, but he is not. He follows up because the news is currently working, and we know that the M19 group seized the Supreme Court in Colombia and killed dozens of people, including judges and officers and others, and currently the army is trying to get them out of court. And you know my friend Ivan and his group, they went to the Supreme Court and that's it. Pablo ordered them to do this, and they were coming for one goal, which was to burn the 6,000 documents that prove Pablo's import. In any drug cases, they actually burn these documents. And literally there is not a single piece of evidence. Pablo, after what happened, Murphy and a guard go to a meeting with the ambassador and representatives of the army and intelligence and try to let them know that this matter was planned so that Pablo would not control it. But no one would be shocked and decide that they would forget Pablo completely and only pursue the communists. Of course, Murphy and a guard refused to answer Alyssa's biography, and that she is the one who leaked this information so that she would not be arrested. On the other hand, we see that Pablo and his men go to meet Ivan and his men to give them their money. But the truth remains that Pablo is coming to finish them off. And he is actually finishing Pablo, and his men are on them in the blink of an eye, so that they will never acknowledge their agreement with Pablo in general. After a period of all this, we see the presidential candidate Galan, if you remember, appears in his speech and says that he will fight drug dealers and that this is the most important thing to him. And Caesar will be Glam's assistant and follow him all the time. The speech, and I think that Jal gets himself into a lot of trouble with drug dealers. So remember, my friend, this Caesar is very good in the meantime. But in another place, we see a guard. He is sitting with Alyssa, and we learn that a guard has begun to love Alyssa and therefore decides to smuggle her out of Colombia because there are no drug dealers or anyone the U.S. intelligence or army tells her that, of course, Pablo and the drug dealers want to kill her, and the U.S. army and intelligence also want to. They also kill her because she is a communist. His mother is selfish. One day they meet Murphy and they know that they have to escape to Alyssa by any means. After that, they come Kafir, and Murphy had a meeting with Safir, the army representative, the intelligence representative, and currently the army representative, the intelligence, knows everyone that they want a guard and Murphy to hand over their communist informant, whose plan Pablo and the M19 group knew about, because they want to rule him. But Murphy and a guard refuse. So of course the army and intelligence representatives are strong and decide to connect this informant themselves after that. Everyone knows that Pablo and the drug dealers are hiding in Panama, and what Panamanian President Norga is hiding is just this talk. Everyone refuses to believe it, because Norga is an ally of the American president. But you know, my friend, that Kafir and Murphy's words are true, because if we went now, but I saw that Pablo and everyone are sitting in Panama, but they are actually and currently thinking about what they will do to return to Colombia. Again, everyone now sees that they prefer here until the atmosphere calms down in Colombia, after which they return. But Pablo Bacon, he has a brother's opinion that he is now sitting at night with his wife Tata and knows that he intends to return to Colombia, even if he has to go to war, and it will be the first step, Pablo. In order to return to Colombia, we'll finish off Jalan after that, and he will control the presidential candidate who comes after him, so that he will grow up refusing to hand over the merchants to America, and thus everyone will be able to return to Colombia with ease. And Pablo will actually begin implementing this plan on this same day. At night, Jalan was at a conference and was shot and died. The next day, a funeral was held for Jalan, and the families of Jalan and Caesar are present at this funeral, and everyone is going to see Jalan's son now. The letter is a farewell to his father, and at the end of the letter he asks Caesar. He ran in place of his father, Jalan, so Caesar decided to actually run for president. But as soon as Caesar started running to the presidency, we see that Pablo, the Mexican, the Ocho brothers, and everyone are riding a plane and returning to Colombia. And when I return to Colombia, Pablo sits with Duca and Valerie ask them to go to Cesar and ask him to cooperate with Pablo and the merchants, not with America, and they actually go to Duca. Valerie sits with Cesar and asks him to refuse to hand anyone over to America. This way, he will ensure that he does not become like Jalal. At that time, Cesar gets upset with this threat is in all their eggs, and he is thinking about what to do with Pablo until Cesar reaches a decision to leave him and go to a guard, who has now returned in his office. A representative of the American army comes to him, and they learn that he undermined one of the M19 group, and it will grow if he confesses to Alyssa that she is helping Murphy and a guard. And at that time, Alyssa and a guard will be tried, and Murphy will have a guard for her, so he will go to an employee at the embassy. He makes her make him fake papers for Alyssa, but he can smuggle her out of the country. As for the U.S. Army representative, we see that he really is. He kidnaps one of the M19 group and continues to torture him until this person confesses that Alyssa cooperated with a guard and Murphy, and most likely they are the ones hiding her. So he is happy the Army representative wants to arrest her. Apart from all of this, we see that Carrie still remembers him. As he is at work, he constantly monitors Pablo's phone so that he can sign it. One time, Carrillo was sitting in a restaurant like this with his wife, and he broke in. This restaurant has one of Pablo's men, and he keeps shooting at him to kill him, but Carrillo is the one who kills him. Then Carrillo calls Pablo. He told him that he was watching his house and knew his family exactly as Pablo knew his family, and he threatened Carrie and Pablo that if he decided to involve his family in their conflict, secondly, he will finish off his family and close the door on him, and Pablo will get angry at all this talk. And it seems that he will start a war against the police and the whole country in general. Pablo is now going to sit with the Mexican, so they have sold the Mexican now that he also intends to start a big war to prove the power of the drug dealers. That's why he intends to buy very powerful missiles to fight the police and the army. And there will be a person named Harton who is currently sitting with the Mexican, he and Pablo, because by the way, he is the Mexican's assistant. And currently when Harton knows all this, we see that he goes to meet Murphy and a guard. They know that Mexico is in a certain city, buying missiles and being able to light them up at that time, and in return, Redding wants protection and equivalent money. The Mexican was handed over, so they sold Murphy and were afraid that they would see and respond to him. After that, the two of them would go and sit with the ambassador and introduce them all. What happened was that the ambassador asked a guard to go to Mexico and try to arrest him. As for Murphy, the ambassador stopped him from staying here because he protects Cesar, who is going to a conference very soon. Before a guard leaves the city, he goes and hands Murphy the paper that Lallis hit him with. He escapes and leaves, but as for the Mexican, we see that he actually goes to a city like this to buy missiles and brings a missile from them as well. We still don't know how a guard will arrest him until now, but this is another conversation for another time. Now, we go to the conference where he will appear Cesar. And Cesar at the beginning of this conference decided that he would refuse to hand over drug dealers to America. But he felt that he had no conscience, so he sold everything. Those present now say that if he remains president, he will become angry with America and hand over all drug dealers. And of course, Cesar's words will literally open a major war in the country as between the government, the drug dealers, Pablo, and this war, my friend, begins literally a few days after all of this and begins with poison. What we are seeing now is passing through a police checkpoint like this, and without warning, it will finish off everyone present, which were two, by the way. Then Boysen called Blue, who was currently sitting with his son, because yes, by the way, Pablo has a son. The important thing is that Boysen called him and introduced him. He finished off two policemen. Pablo was very happy and knew that Boysen had to spread news among his men that anyone would kill a police officer in the city will take a very respectable amount. But from that moment on, a massacre began against the police officers. More than 200 policemen were killed in the magazine. Now we go to Murphy and see Murphy now. He searches his car because he intends to escape. Lisa, and he is very worried that the army representative means he is Barab, by the way. What he thought was that he actually found a microphone in his car that he was spying on. So he decided to use this microphone to work as an army representative. After a while, we see the army representative sitting in Murphy's car and hearing Murphy talking now with his wife and Alyssa. And he knows now the army representative said that Alyssa would run away. The army representative immediately went to Murphy and stopped, but he did not blame Alyssa or anyone else. And we saw now that Alyssa is in favor of me being Murphy's wife and taking her out of the country completely, so that she is safe after Murphy finishes the Alyssa issue. He decides to go back and look for Pablo again. So he goes to Cesar and becomes Apple Cesar, his assistant and his chief guard, whose name is Eduardo. They know that Murphy is on their side. And if they want anything to help protect them from Pablo, they know him. So I thank everyone, and they know that they will be in contact with him after that. Murphy meets one of his men, and the one who is currently giving him a picture of him belongs to a Spanish person. And they know that this Spaniard arrived in Colombia and began to receive him himself. And this means that this Spaniard is important in some way to Pablo. So Murphy decided to go around behind this Spaniard. He knows what his story is with Pablo. This Spaniard wants you. So he is at the same time with Pablo, by the way, and also Gustavo. His cousin. We know from their words that this Spaniard remains an explosives maker. And currently Pablo asks him to make him a bomb. And in return he gives it to him 3,000 kilos of cocaine. But the Spaniard refuses, so Gustavo's egg is gone. But Pablo is not. He was satisfied with that, and they decided to make him the bomb, so the Spaniard agreed. But Gustavo began to feel that Pablo whispers his picture more and more in front of everyone. And the biggest evidence of this is that he is now going to the sister of the brothers Ocho. And we know here that, Gustavo loves Marta behind everyone's back. And no one knows anything about them. The important thing is that the one who is talking to Gustavo now he is upset with Pablo because he whispers his picture. So his wife offers him that they run away together, but Gustavo does not agree. They now read that Murphy decided to look for this Spaniard. So he took some of it and went to Suarez and asked him, "Who is this?" But Suarez does not want to say anything to Murphy. And they know that he is only dealing with a guard who gets angry with Murphy and hits Suarez, forcing them to know who is this Spaniard after that. Murphy goes to the embassy and remains with the ambassador, a representative of the army and also a representative of intelligence. And they know that he was destined. He knows that this Spaniard is an explosives maker. And he feels that Pablo brought him here to make explosives for him to get rid of Caesar and to ask for Murphy. He searches the intelligence files for Al-Azmani. This is very necessary. Maybe he will find something like this or that will end the case. So everyone agreed, and indeed Murphy enters the intelligence warehouse and continues to search it until he learns a lot of information about the Spaniard and confirms that Pablo, he must have brought him a lot of explosives to finish off Cez. So Murphy goes now with the ambassador before Cez and his assistant also. Edward and Benso are now postponing any travel until they reach this Spaniard. But Caesar, of course, refuses all the talk and continues his travels because he wants to tour the whole country and talk to people about his electoral project, and he doesn't want anything to disrupt it. So he goes to Murphy's egg and the ambassador, and they leave after that. So we see that this Spaniard finishes the idea of making the bomb and puts a recording device inside it. After that, Pablo and his men go to a young man named Jaime. He is a young man who is new to Pablo, and they know that Pablo wants to travel on a plane like this. Caesar will travel on it and be with him. This recording device, in order to record, agreed to let Jaime do this task, and he, my dear, does not know that this is a bomb, not a recording device, and that he will die with Cis next. We will see that Suarez calls as usual and Pablo, and they know that Murphy is looking for him and the Spaniard. At the time Pablo gets angry and sends boys into Suarez because he doesn't want him to work with him. And at the same time, of course, he works with the drug fight American. But the days pass and we see Suarez at the airport and he is traveling. And Hemi is also at the airport to travel, of course, and again. He thinks that he has a recording and it is gel. Nothing more than that. The important thing is that before the plane takes off, Murphy comes and asks Caesar that I am not. He travels because he will be killed. So he is really afraid of Caesar, and this time he really decides not to travel. But Jaime remains in the plane's cabin and uses a device. The recording is as it was before. So the bomb explodes, and of course the poor Jaime dies. And everyone on the plane, of course Caesar, did not get anything something because of course it is not far from all this talk. We go to Kay and a guard because they are currently able to determine the place in Mexico, and they actually go to this place and face the Mexican and his men. At that time, the Mexican takes advantage of the opportunity and takes his son Freddy so that, he escapes from here and lets his men shoot Carrillo, a guard, and the police, and they take a car and he actually escapes. But Carrillo and everyone, they stay behind them until they are able to kill the Mexican and his son. And this will be the first successful strike by Carrillo and his band against drug dealers. Of course, the last one will not be final in the mug. A period of time has passed since all of this. And we know that the explosion, what happened on the plane, caused the death of more than 107 people. And because of this explosion, it literally turned into Pablo is a terrorist wanted from all over the world and has also become the most wanted man in America. We see that a guard, Murphy and Carrillo, are going to Bucket now. He meets Natalie, who is Jaime's wife, the poor young man who blew up the plane. Anyway, they keep asking Natalie if Pablo, who is like Jaime, is riding the plane or who exactly. And they know that it is better to cooperate with them, so that of course they can arrest Pablo, because Pablo will kill her and her little daughter, because he hides his crime. But Natalie now refuses to tell them anything, because of course she is still afraid for me. On the other hand, we see that Pablo bids farewell to his entire family and decides to flee to a safe place until things stabilize a little. And we see that Pablo, he is now talking to Poison and asking him to kill Tali, so that no one will link what happened on the plane to him. We will see what will he do, but in the future. But now we go to Caesar, my friend. He wins the elections, and a party is held for him in honor of him. At this party, Caesar sat with a person named Tobar and why he became the former president of Colombia. The important thing is that Caesar asks Tobar what he advises him to do. And Tobar says, "Don't shout at the Americans because they might make you lose track of what he said." And we see that he is actually doing it because the next day, he called Tobar the American ambassador, Murphy, a guard, and representatives of the army and intelligence also know the machines first. So he will keep chasing Pablo and will not leave him. But he will ask them to stop searching for Pablo in the whole country because this is not their specialty, only sir. After this meeting, we see that the army and police continue to attack Pablo's printing places, hoping to arrest him there only because of the many informants who recruited Pablo. He could normally escape every time. Pablo did not keep quiet about this. No, he started to explode. There are a lot of vital places in the country. By the way, in response to everything that says Pablo does as well, sir, because of the scrutiny he gets, he takes his men and goes to meet a gang leader named Pacho and asks Pacho to participate together, and they smuggle drugs together. But Pacho refuses for several reasons, the biggest of which is that he is arrogant and does not like Pablo at all. And Pablo does not accept him freely via threatens to kill him and walks away. And we see that Pacho decides to cause problems for Pablo. So one day he meets his brother Ocho and they know that their sister loves him, Gustavo. And Just Fu say the same thing and he accepts it a lot in secret, and Just Fu is of course close to Pablo. Of course everyone is shocked and we still don't know what they intend. What do they do with their sister, away from Pacho? We see that Pablo is sending Doki now to meet S. Ducky wants to make an agreement with Caesar to ensure that Pablo stops the bombings he is carrying out. And in return he also stops arresting him. Pablo's men attack his stores. Caesar refuses, and now Doki goes to Pablo and knows all of this. And Pablo gets angry, and Doki walks and sits now with Gustavo and asking him what to do. Then Gustavo knows that the only solution now is for them to kidnap very important people in the country, and so on. They pressured Caesar to agree with them, so Pablo agreed, and indeed Pablo's men began kidnapping the families of politicians, celebrities, and so on. We see that the journalist always goes as the first one to cover the events, and she knows that they happened from Pablo. Anyway, once upon a time, Valerie covers a kidnapping operation from countries, and a famous broadcaster comes to her and remains the daughter of Tobar, the former president, and this broadcaster begins to accuse Valerie from bottom to bottom. She knows Pablo in some way, so she gets upset in Ray and goes to Pablo and asks him to. He kidnaps Tobar's daughter, and this will also benefit him because she is very famous. So Pablo agrees and actually sends his men to kidnap Tobar's daughter and imprison her in a place like this. And one time Pablo brought her and wanted to film a video in which she said that she was fine and put pressure on President Salazar. In the same breath, time means that he will accept to negotiate with Pablo. Indeed, Tobar's daughter decides to do this against her will and films this video, which is being broadcast everywhere now. They see Caesar, Tobar, and his wife together. And here Tobar asks Caesar to negotiate with Pablo to free his daughter, or he threatens now that he will stop the financial support he gives him. In addition to the fact that his image will be greatly distorted in the media everywhere. Of course, Caesar will be annoyed by all this talk. He sits with himself now thinking, and in the end he decides that he is finally negotiating with Pablo. After that, we see Pablo now taking Gustavo and leaving to a place like this in the mountains. And they know that he intends to build his fortified castle in this magical place, which will later be protected from the police and anyone else. They know Pablo, by the way, that he will make the issue of the castle in this particular place part of his agreement with Caesar. Of course, Gustavo is very happy and agrees, very much so. On the other hand, we see that Poison and two other killers are now looking for Natalie, Hammy's wife, so that means they kill her and go to her house now. But they can't find him. This is because Natalie took her little daughter and went to hide with a friend of hers. So the important thing is that one time they were able to kill Poison. And on Monday, the murder with him would reach Natalie, and they would kill her and her friend. And it would be crazy Poison. He will kill a girl who follows the child. But he will not be able to reach Murphy and a guard's place because they were already in Barabo when they ran away with Poison, and the one who with him. Murphy's guard prefers to expel them, but unfortunately they cannot arrest anyone. So they return to the house where Natalie is and take the little girl. Natalie goes to take this child to Connie's wife, and they decide to raise her together in general a week from now. We see Pablo and Gustavo running away in the forest, and we know that they were going to meet President Caesar. But the police came out on them, shot them, and quickly fled before they were arrested. He now realizes that Caesar is trying to arrest them. They have to before any agreement is made with them. And thus Pablo decides to deal with him and makes him regret this. So what he does remains easy. He goes to Tobar's daughter and asks her to appear in a second video, asking Caesar to agree to the negotiations and who will be killed. Her and all the hostages, those present, agreed with Tobar's daughter, and she actually appears in a video and says all this. But Caesar doesn't care about him, and they read his attempt to arrest him on Pablo. One time, the American intelligence representative and his men were able to pick up a nice call in which Tobar's daughter was being held in Beirut. Carrillo and his force are with him, meaning they free Tobar's daughter, but instead of freeing her, they kill her by mistake. And of course, a funeral is held for her, and in this funeral, her mother talks to Caesar and asks him to agree to Pablo's words, because if he doesn't agree, all of them will see the same fate. So Caesar is affected. This time, they decide to accept the conditions of the door. After that, it goes to supply Murphy, a guard, and the ambassador. They know that the president has decided to accept Pablo's conditions, so everyone thinks that Pablo's conditions include that he confesses that he is a drug dealer and receives a prison sentence. His mind is very light, and this referee will also kill Pablo in the castle he is building in the mountain. Not only that, but Pablo also wants the guards to be there. His men and the police are completely away from him, but in general he will spend the night in prison or the castle. This means the period they agreed upon, and everyone saw that Pablo had imposed his opinion on the president. But Eduardo told them that this is the only solution to end all these problems that they are unable to do and leave and walk on. On the other hand, we see that Pablo has now brought Doki, Valerie, Justfu, and Bet Phil with them with all this happy news, and they are all happy. After that celebration, Pablo talks to Duke, and they know that this is not the end of their work. And currently Duke's work remains. He is trying to reduce the prison period. But Pablo imprisoned her in his own prison, not more than that. The important thing is that Fleury is talking to Pablo now as, well, you know that she must stay away from him for the coming period, after he officially admits that he is a drug dealer, because her closeness to him will harm him as a journalist. Pablo knows that she will remain close to him against her will. After that, Pablo spoke to him. Gustavo knew that he knew the girl named Marta, the sister of the H brothers, and he asked Pablo told him to stay away from her completely, so that no problems would happen to them from the Ocho brothers. Gustavo knows that he will think after he has summoned Pablo, and Gustavo are two of their men named Fernando and Kiko, and he knows that the period during which Pablo Gustavo will go to prison, their role is to manage all the work while they are not around. And they know that Pablo and Gustav will always be with them moment by moment. They are not considered strong prisoners, so they agreed with Fernando and Kiko and thank Pablo for his precious trust. On the other hand, we see that Carrillo. He sits with a guard, and Murphy tells them that they must arrest Pablo and Gustavo before this deal is officially concluded with Caesar, who will not be able to. They are arrested forever. So Murphy and Kafir agree to his words and decide to work on this matter at the same time. But in another place he sees Pacho is sitting with Valeria and trying to turn Valeria against Pablo so that she can work with him. But she does not give Pacho a final and faithful response. In the middle of the conversation, Pacho hints to Valerie that he will get rid of Pablo very soon. But how and when he does not say, and you know, my friend Pacho does not say anything. That's it. And the biggest indication of this is that on the same night, Pablo was with his wife Tata at home, and suddenly a bomb exploded in the house. But fortunately, nothing happens to Pablo or Tot, and Pablo quickly goes to see his son. He also finds him fine and sees his little daughter without him. She is fine, but she will have an injury to her ear because of it. This means that she will lose hearing in one of her ears throughout her life. And of course it will be Pablo. He will go crazy about what happened and wants to know who did this to him. And he also wants to know who handed him over and knew where these people were the next day. We still see that the Ocho brothers receive a picture of Gustavo and their sister Marta, and thus it is confirmed that their sister is in a forbidden and terrible relationship, Bastab. And of course this drives him crazy. So they took each other and went to Patch and asked Pacho to find them any intermediary that would make them confess with their crimes and imprisonment for a very short period of time. Exactly like Pablo. In return, they will hand Gustavo over to the police before the deal with President Caesar is completed. Pacho is very happy and helps them. Indeed, not much time has passed and he sees that the Ocho brothers go to meet the police and they sell everything. Something about Gustavo and the place he might be in now. After that, we see Gustavo going to a hotel with Marta. And suddenly they leave. Carrillo has a few officers and he just proves it and notifies me, and they go to a place in front of him. And here Carrillo started talking to Gustavo, and they found out that he kidnapped him illegally because the president was embarrassed for them to get close to him or Pablo. And currently, Carrie and Gustavo know that it is possible. It's very normal for him to kill him immediately or leave him alone. In return, Pablo knows where he is. Of course, my friend Gustavo, after all this talk, refuses to say where Pablo is, and this makes Carrillo angry. So the officers with him actually beat Gustavo. They keep hitting him until Gustavo dies in a scene that shocked everyone. Of course, now this news is reaching Pablo and his family. So I make him very upset. Gustavo and Blue read that he will wage war on everyone. And after a few days of all this will come to Pablo, and you will know that the Ocho brothers are the ones who handed Gustavo over, and Pacho helped them in this. Pablo will go crazy and his men will be killed. Pacho. And we see that Pacho at that time was playing a football match like this with his friends. And suddenly Pablo's men opened the field and opened it. Fire is on everyone. So B is afraid of Pacho and runs away quickly. And because he is lucky, he can actually run away and not die. The important thing is that the next day we will see the news. They all say that the Colombian House of Representatives has decided that they will not hand over any drug dealers to America. And of course, that is what it wanted Pablo from the beginning. And Pablo feels that this is a victory. Of course, so he holds a funeral for Gustavo on the same day. After a while, a plane arrives at Pablo. Eduardo comes down from her and Pablo gives me his deal papers with Caesar. So Pablo lays eggs on them, surrenders himself, and walks with Eduardo, meaning he is imprisoned in the prison he originally built. But on the same day that Pablo was imprisoned, he received news that poison was in a restaurant. This is not specific, and very many of Pablo's killers and his men are also there. So he always sends Murphy, Carrillo, and his men to this restaurant in turn. They finish everything. And yes, this is the scene that we started the series with from the beginning. On the other hand, we see that Pablo had settled in this imaginary prison. And of course he was living his life comfortably. In addition to the fact that a truck came to him every day, he loads himself with everything he wants and teaches this truck driver. His name is Beja, and I want you to remember, the name is a bit with him. But away from the truck and Uncle Beja, we see that one of his men, Pablo, named Velasco, is coming to him now. Currently, they know that Pacho and his gang want to reconcile with Pablo, so they know that Pablo agrees to this reconciliation. But first, it is necessary a new group of Pacho's men kill him so he can learn his lesson. Velasco agrees, and they read and tell the men to do the same. After a while, we will see Pacho is with Joses, his new men who died, and he is very upset. But he is filled with a meeting with Fernando and Kiko, the two who are in charge of Pablo's business. The important thing now is that they know that Pablo has decided to reconcile, but he wants to take $12 million from Pacho and his gang. At this moment, Pacho gets angry and drops the amount to $10 million because he wants to. He gets rid of this war, and then Fernando and Kiko go to Pablo in prison and find out that Pacho agreed to pay only $10 million. Pablo doesn't like this number, so they know that they are passing through a Pacho who is forced to pay $30 million in addition. They are required from now on to pay Pablo $1 million every month instead of $250,000. And that's it, my friend. This money is paid by Kiko and Fernando because they are just looking for Pablo's job. Which of course means that they give Pablo almost most of the profits from the job, meaning these are things other than the profits from the job. But they are forced to Fernando and Kiko except against their will, so that Pablo does not do anything to them. On the other hand, Murphy's guard sits with Carrillo, who he knows them now that he has been transferred and will go to serve in Spain. But before he is transferred, Carrillo gives them a picture of Pablo's prison, which shows that this is not the case. He was imprisoned permanently. And Carrillo asked a guard and Murphy to keep looking after Pablo until they proved that he was violating the prison agreement. He treated her with Caesar, and thus they would be able to tell him from this imaginary prison that this is a real prison. So they both agreed with his words and decided to do so. Then a guard and Pablo go to the army and intelligence representatives, and they continue to examine together the pictures of Pablo's prison. And here they discover that the prison has a bathroom tower, and they know that Pablo sends a message to his men outside the prison through this bathroom. So the next day they go a guard and Murphy watched the prison, and Bella was actually a pigeon coming out of the prison. So his father laid eggs and believed a pigeon from him, and got up with the pigeon. This is a message. You say send the expenses with Beja through the tunnel on the same day at night. Murphy and a guard sit together thinking about what exactly this tunnel is. He thinks that Pablo might have built a secret tunnel under the prison to send anything to the prison. It is forbidden. But after a little thought, they find that this is Beja. whether it is the truck that brings food and things like that to Pablo. They know that the word tunnel refers to the truck, but he is responsible for transporting anything prohibited to prison. And thus the next day they confirm Basha and know that they will install cameras and microphones in his truck so that they film everything in it and can prove that Pablo is breaking the prison deal and will be transferred to prison. It's normal after that. We see that Basha goes to prison every day while he's in the truck, taking pictures of a box. The truck that sometimes has alcohol or girls inside it for Pablo, or Omar's game, or whatever, it's generally forbidden. And these pictures reach Cesar, and Eduardo's assistant now knows that Pablo must be transferred to a normal prison. But Cesar, he refuses and decides to forget about Pablo completely, as if it never happened, because if Pablo is transferred to prison, he will return to committing more terrorist acts from the beginning. This is not in anyone's interest, and therefore Cesar decides not to do anything at all to Pablo. Mentioning Pablo, so we see him one day like this coming. He has his mother, wife and children to celebrate his birthday here in his simple prison, and he will be coming with everyone now, Judy, Murad, Kiko, and whoever knows Pablo. Kiko is upset that Pablo gave him the money he takes from him for $1 million. And then Pablo gets upset and he doubts Kiko and is not very comfortable with him. The problem is that something like this happens, which confirms Pablo's doubts. This thing is that there is Liseco. What I told you a while ago is that Pablo is currently coming and they know something very strange, which is that there are supposed to be farms like this that work in Kiko and Fernando's land. Why did this farmer accidentally leave $3 million on the land and start playing with Pablo's head in Liseco Fernando? And Kiko stole the $1 million from his money, which was supposed to be Pablo's, and buried it on the ground here. But their luck is that the farmer found it, and Pablo is actually convinced of that, even though this is not true at all. But the truth remains, my friend, that this money was this. She is Pablo's accountant, who was arrested a long time ago, if you remember, and he was the only one who knew where the money was in the first place and did not tell anyone about the money. This is completely final, meaning that when he gets out of prison, he takes it for himself and does whatever he wants. But his luck was bad that a farmer found it, and their luck was even worse. Fernando and Kiko, because this money was buried in their land. So they built on it. Pablo, Fernando, and Kiko go to prison and keep asking them about the money and whether they stole it and buried it or what. And then they keep both. Pablo knows that they did not take any money, and they do not know how this money came to the land. And they know that this land originally belonged to Gustavo, the beginning. And perhaps Gustavo was the one who made this art and forgot. But Pablo does not believe all this talk, except that he knows Kiko now that he is upset with him and complains that he is still with you. Pablo on Fernando, he keeps hitting him violently until he kills him. And then his men pass by and kill him, Kiko. And this is what actually happens after that. They take bodies, both are burned and both die unjustly. And they literally did nothing. But you know that it doesn't matter strong now. What is really important is that Enfani helps Mexico. If you think he is going now, meet Pacho Pacho, who in turn knows that Kiko Fernando was killed in prison. And now he is asking Navaj Auntie to go and find out this information to Murphy's guard, so they can use it and save Pablo. To another prison, Nafjanati agrees and goes now to meet Murphy and a guard who has this information in their hands. So they think a little about a guard and Murphy doing it. What with this information? And they know that if they said all this and Caesar wouldn't do anything, then they decided to act. They go to the newspaper and they read to expose everything Pablo does in this prison, so that they put pressure on Caesar. And thus he is transferred to prison the next day. We see that all the news is that Pablo Escobar killed 2 people in prison and is doing a lot of things garbage in prison, so he had to be transferred to a real prison. At that time, Murphy and a guard were sitting at the embassy and seeing this news, and of course they were. They are all happy. But their joy is not complete when the ambassador summons them now, and they learn that they leaked the photos. The story is that these prisoners die without any order from her, and therefore they broke the laws and stopped the work, and they will be investigated. And then a guard and Murphy are shocked because this is not fair. But he does not object, and after a while Murphy goes home. But before he entered the house, a gang came, and it occurred to me that Murphy was late. So I called a guard. You know what happened. So he sold a guard, took some of it, went to his embassy, and became Apple, the army representative, and asked him to look for Murphy Alayana to kidnap suddenly. It seemed that he had been kidnapped. And a guard asked the actor that this matter was being done secretly without him being officially informed. Of course, the army representative agreed. After a short period of all this, the army representative comes to a guard, and they learn that Murphy has no trace and is really a stranger who was kidnapped and must inform him. A guard agreed to inform and go to the ambassador to inform her. So he was surprised that Murphy, my friend, who left the ambassador and started a guard, tells us everything that happened to him. Here we discover that those who kidnapped Murphy were his men, Pacho, and with them, of course, he went crazy, and they took him to Patch himself. Pacho found out Murphy had a recording of him asking Carrillo to go finish off Poison. Although this is not his role, and he is not supposed to participate in any work with Carrillo after Pablo's imprisonment, and therefore he violated the law, and he is tried very normally and imprisoned. And Pacho Murphy knows that he will report him or listen to him and work with him. Pacho Murphy knows that he has a chance to think and let him walk now after he talked Murphy. All of this, the guard, without any introduction, violently grabs the guard and asks who leaked this information to Patch. Whether it was you or who it was, Murphy is sure that no one else knows the guard who leaked this information. And Murphy knows that Pacho wants to take action and kill Pablo in order to take revenge. Of course, Murphy doesn't know how to do this. At that time, a guard keeps telling Murphy that he has nothing to do with anything. But Murphy doesn't believe him and leaves. After that, a melody guard goes like this. And there he comes to my soul. And here is your daughter. That a guard is actually working with Pacho and his gang. I will know what else he will do. But in a summary of the second season of this series, the last thing we see is that President Caesar, after learning about the matter that Pablo killed 2 people in prison, decides to tell them from prison, and the first collects all his men to see how they would do this. And in the end, Caesar decided to send a division from the army led by a person named Risa, because to bring Pablo, and indeed this group goes to Pablo's prison, but they check and do not arrest Pablo or anything after we see President Caesar is now asking Eduardo for help to go to Pablo, who was arrested, and negotiate with him that he be transferred to a regular prison. Neither he nor his men cause problems. In return, he will return to prison again after a short period. Of course, this is not true, but Caesar does this just for the sake of Pablo is transferred to the regular prison without any problems. The important thing is that Eduardo actually goes to Pablo's prison, but he is surprised that Arisa and his men are trapped in the prison. No one arrested Pablo, and when Eduardo asks Arisa now why he did not arrest Pablo, they know that Arisa had orders. Eduardo surrounded him, but he didn't care and went to prison. He sat with Pablo and told him that we would tell him now normal prison. After that, they will return to his normal prison where he is sitting, but after a while, nothing more. So Pierre releases Pablo and tells him, you will do it, as follows. You will contact Caesar and you will know that Pablo rejected the deal and the army here must leave so that Pablo can let Eduardo leave, and you will contact him. Eduardo is with Caesar and they know all this talk. At that moment, Caesar closes the door with Eduardo and his men immediately send a special squad to storm in prison and kills him permanently and all his men and frees Edward. After a short period, Pablo learns that there are indeed special forces coming to the prison, so he prefers. A little while later, Eduardo knows that his president betrayed him. First, the president sent a squad from the army and ordered them no one breaks into prison after that. I sent Eduardo to negotiate with Pablo because he knows that Pablo will either kill Eduardo or Crane will take him. In both cases, it means that Caesar will have an excuse to break into prison to kill Pablo. And Pablo Eduardo now knows that his boss decided to sacrifice him. Pablo's death is not more important to him than his life. But Pablo knows Eduardo now that neither she will die here nor he will kill him. And they know that he will leave him, and if he dies, he will die at the hands of the special forces sent by his boss Caesar. After that, Pablo passes by a group of his men and they prefer with Eduardo, but none of them killed him, and Pablo left, and no one knew where he was going. After a short period of time, he began to invade the special forces prison, and they keep killing any of Pablo's men in front of them until they reach Edward, and he gets rid of the men with him, and he frees you. And so far, what is not perfect is that they do not find Pablo at all, and they only find the opening of a tunnel under the prison. And here he realizes that everyone ignored him and said that he had actually built an underground tunnel to escape from this prison without anyone knowing. And Hayan had escaped from it, and no one would be able to. A second one arrives and we see Pablo and a group of his men walking in the forest, and we know that they actually escaped from the secret tunnel he was building, and no one knew anything about them, except Pablo and his followers. And with this point, the series ends, but the story is not over yet, my friend. Rather, it is still beginning. And Pablo's war with the police and the army, it will start next season. And of course, there are many questions that we still do not know the answers to. But of course, we will know them next season. Until this happens, I can't tell you anything else.